channel and you're here and you're watching.
Okay. Alright, so we back. Today we're going to be reacting to history of the 1918 flu pandemic in 7 minutes. So today I'm going to be reacting to the history of that pandemic. We're going to see if there's any similarities between what's going on now and what's going on and what went on back then. It's going to be weird if it is some, because... Wait, we're going to pause it because
She's trying to start, man. Trying to start without it. Tell her
slow down. Okay. So, I'm going to be watching on my phone. I'm going to put it on the screen so y'all can watch it too. It's going to be over here. Let's start. I'm going to turn it up.
Minutes. Ready? Go. Countries all over the world crippled by an invisible enemy. Economies devastated. Millions dead. Even more sick. The year? 1918. And a virus just sparked one of the deadliest pandemics in recorded history. At the time, the 1918 flu pandemic was often referred to as the Spanish flu. But it actually isn't Spanish at all. There are several origins.
Look at that. Let's pause it. Wait. Ain't that hella funny? How people called it the Spanish flu, but it wasn't even Spanish at all. Ain't that crazy how people do that? Try to make it seem like something, and it ain't even it.
Theories, but the only consensus is it definitely didn't start in Spain. The flu was identified in early 1918 at a military camp in Kansas, where 48 soldiers
in Kansas. It started in the U.S.
died. So by one theory, the so-called Spanish flu could actually be American, or it could be French. Some believe the flu started in the trenches of World War I in Etaples, France.
And why? Because they was nasty. They was nasty.
Or possibly even Aldershot, UK. A third theory traces the origin to an outbreak of a respiratory disease in China's Shanxi province the year prior. Historian Mark Humphreys found records showing a group of Chinese laborers mobilized to work on the Western Front, 3,000 of whom ended up quarantined with flu-like symptoms. So why did people start calling it the Spanish flu if it was American, French, or Chinese in origin? The pandemic hit in the latter part of World War I, and Allied censors downplayed the spread of the virus to avoid lowering morale. Since Spain was neutral, it more accurately reported the flu's spread. The Spanish king also fell gravely ill with the virus, getting headlines outside of Spain. Together, this gave the false impression Spain was more affected by the virus.
So basically, where it actually started in World War I, the people who were fighting played it down. And they didn't say that the virus was as bad as it actually was. So the Spanish people, they reported actually how bad the flu was and how many people it could kill and all that. And the king just so happened to have some type of virus. And he was sick too. So then they started calling it the Spanish flu.
So why was this particular strain so deadly? It started like all influenza, a virus transmitted person to person via airborne respiratory droplets, like coughs or sneezes. The 1918 flu became an outbreak because it was a new strain, and people had no immunity to it. This new strain appeared after an H1N1 virus.
See, now, I'm going to keep count of the similarities of now and back then. I done heard a few myself, like this one, people they've never saw it before, some people are getting it more. That's like now. Nobody have ever had the corona, we don't know
where it came from.
And now hella people getting it because they've never had it before.
Virus that likely originated in birds made the jump to humans. But why did it affect?
And ain't they crazy? They didn't say it was the corona originated from birds, but they said it was from pigs.
So many healthy young people? Modern scientists have reconstructed the strain, finding it caused a cytokine storm, or an extreme overreaction in the immune system. Essentially, the virus used your own defense system against you, causing inflammation in the lungs and fluid accumulation, and sometimes setting off deadly secondary infections. The body's reaction could be so severe that the victim could drown in their own body fluids within mere hours. In the early 20th century, we were ill-prepared for a flu pandemic. First, we had no flu vaccines, no antibiotics to treat secondary infections like pneumonia, and penicillin was still 10 years away from being invented. Second, the flu hit during war. In the U.S., thousands of men fell ill while in the process of being deployed across the Atlantic to fight. Once at the war front, several conditions helped spread the virus. Undernourished soldiers lacked sufficient vitamin B, causing more deaths, and horrible hygiene conditions in the trenches escalated the...
Ain't this crazy? Wait, I paused it. Ain't this crazy how people literally go off to war and they sign up and all that, but they experience like
such bad stuff.
War should not be that bad. People should
spread, a sign of what was to come for cities with dense populations living in close quarters. Third, without any pharmaceutical treatments, governments were left with few weapons to combat the virus. Isolation and disinfectants were their best tools. Unfortunately, control efforts were also localized and applied unevenly.
You heard that? Did you hear that? Did you peep that? I don't think you peeped it. So I paused it so we can talk about it.
They said isolation. That's what we're doing right now. That's another similarity. We staying in the house. Y'all already know.
In the U.S., there was an absence of steady government leadership on the federal level, and not every city acted swiftly, and there were repercussions. After Philadelphia detected their first case, officials launched a campaign to deter people from coughing, spitting, and sneezing in public. However, about a week later, they still held a citywide parade that over 200,000 people attended. Flu cases quickly rose to 20,000, forcing the city to finally shut down public gathering spaces, including theaters and churches. In contrast to Philadelphia, St. Louis mandated.
I know you peeped it.
And I'm from Missouri, and they just said St. Louis. Let's see what they talking about.
All people experiencing symptoms quarantine in their homes just 2 days after the city's first case was discovered. As a result, during the deadliest initial 6-month period, the death rate in St. Louis was less than half of Philadelphia's death rate.
Isn't that crazy?
Fortunately, many cities were like St. Louis, and lives were saved due to drastic measures. Other cities like San Francisco, Milwaukee, Kansas City, New York responded quickly and effectively with interventions like mandatory quarantines and staggered business hours, which cut the spread by rates of 30 to 50%. Social distancing wasn't in their terminology, but that's largely what they were doing. In the United States, many cities closed theaters, movie houses, schools, and prohibited public gatherings. San Francisco required any person serving the public to wear.
Do y'all peep that? I didn't ask.
Swear to God.
I have not watched this video. I did not watch none of this video. This is my first time watching this video. Literally everything they did back then is what they doing now. Like, what?
Wear masks and recommended residents to wear a mask when in public. Salt Lake City marked 2,000 flu-infested homes with quarantine signs, and in Arizona, $10 fines were given to those who were seen not wearing the proper protective gear in public. But the pandemic spread benefited from misinformation and a lack of fact-checking. Snake oil salesmen had a field day. Dr. Franklin Dwayne ran advertisements about a fake home remedy called Dr. Pierce's Pleasant Pellets. Other fake remedies included Dr. Bell's Pine Tar Honey, Shank's Mandrake Pills, and the aptly named Miller's Antiseptic Snake Oil. Vicks VapoRub also advertised itself as a remedy for the flu, claiming to stimulate the mucous membrane to throw off the germs.
A vapor rub to freaking help with the flu. If you don't get the...
In reality, the most effective preventative routine wasn't downing tar honey or snake oil. It was early government intervention by simultaneously closing a city's public spaces, including schools and churches. Studies show that method had the potential to cut city death rates in half. But with some cities' slower or more lenient responses, the death rates skyrocketed. In October alone, the virus killed an estimated 195,000 Americans. Compare that to 116,000, the number of American soldiers who died throughout all of World War I. War efforts also complicated the outbreak by creating a shortage of physicians, as many had been drafted for the war effort. The Red Cross had to recruit more volunteers, and medical students were assigned jobs as interns or nurses. On the other side of the war, Germans were also struggling. That same month, October 1918, German civilians were hit particularly hard by the pandemic. Researcher Andrew Price Smith notes that the flu significantly hindered the ability of the German workforce to support the war effort, potentially helping end German military efforts. The next month, the war was declared over. Cities like San Francisco, believing the virus was safely contained after the initial wave, lifted their restrictions. Americans celebrated and soldiers returned home, contributing to yet another resurgence of the flu. In San Francisco, 1,800 flu cases and 101...
Did y'all hear that? They lifted everything. That's how they do now. Lifted everything. So everything cool. Y'all can go do your thing. Da 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 da.
Then there was another wave of the virus.
deaths were reported in the first 5 days of January. Cities that had kept interventions in place never experienced another wave of high mortality rates. How did the 1918 flu pandemic end? In the U.S., fatal cases continued through the spring of 1919, and then herd immunity weakened the virus's stronghold. And according to historian John Barry, the virus itself eventually weakened, likely mutating into a less lethal strain. All told, the 1918 flu pandemic left 50 to 100 million people dead.
Dun dun. I feel like that definitely should have been at the end of it. Look at this. Yeah. Is that not crazy? Like, it literally, the stuff that's going on now went on all the way back then.
And they still don't know how to treat this stuff. People still dying.
Like, what's going on? It's not making no sense. But I'm gonna catch y'all next video.